Hello again, Dave.
Hello.
And David Obuchowski from Tempest is here with us. We've lured yet another person into our virtual blanket fort.
Hi, fellas. How you doing?
We are doing fantastic. So I'm super excited to have you on. I've really liked your Tempest podcast. And then, in kind of like learning more about you before you came on the show, I'm super excited to talk about kind of just your approach to cars and car culture, because it is kind of like a different sort of angle of attack than we normally see, I think, in most of the media that we consume around cars. But I just wanted to let you kind of introduce yourself really quick and just tell people who may not be familiar about Tempest, which is kind of the reason mostly you're here, right?
Right. So Tempest is a documentary podcast that is it's automotive in that every episode has something to do with cars, but it's about the human experience. It's about the people behind them. The people who, in search of cars. So there's stories that are tragic, some that are just strange, some that are funny. I like writing from a personal standpoint, so some of the stories are sort of personal. They even weave in personal narratives. So not a huge focus on, gearing and things like that.
Right.
But a lot of focus on, I always say just sort of the shorthand is like, car stories are the best stories. And you don't need to be a car person. You get into a room with someone and, I'm not really a car person. But then like 2 minutes later, they're going to tell you about the first car they ever had.
Right.
And like, and then like the door was so rusted, like the handle like came off one night and you get this like great story. And so that's my impetus with, it actually started with my essays before Tempest with Jalopnik. And then I pitched the editor there, like I got this great audio and I come from a broadcasting background. So, I think we can do this into like a long form documentary kind of a thing. And he went for it. So that's the, so there's been 2 seasons. I'm in pre-production on the 3rd. It's actually been developed into a TV show. So that's another thing I haven't talked a lot about in public because there's, not in a place to have a lot of things to announce quite yet, but that's been a journey.
Sure.
So, yeah. There's a lot there.
That's awesome. So where are you in that sort of process? Like, can you talk about where it's being developed or for what?
So I can speak to some things. It's being developed by two people who are just actually, to me, I guess what I should say is it has been developed. The development process has been ongoing for years, and it's completed now. It's sort of into the next phase. It's one of the people who developed it is literally my favorite filmmaker. His name is Keith Gordon. He directs episodes of Fargo, of Better Call Saul, Leftovers. Wow. He directed my all-time favorite movie ever made, A Midnight Clear. I wrote a long-form essay about him. It was my writing about him that we became close. Actually, even before that, we had become close just because I just loved his work, and so I got in touch with him, and then I wrote an essay about him, and then him and his wife is a film producer. She produced Conan O'Brien Can't Stop, Crips and Bloods, Made in America. She's, a fantastic producer. They heard the first season of Tempest, and within 2 episodes, we're just like, this is a TV show, which I was thrilled. So that happened while the first season was airing, and if my memory serves, that was 2018. So,
okay.
Here we are, early 2021. It slowly sort of was developed over the next year or so. I moved my whole family out to LA, and we spent more time on it. So we've got a couple ways forward. Can't really speak to at this point which way it's going to be, but there's been a lot of work with it, and it's been an experience. No matter what happens with it, even if it never really sees the light of day, which I don't like to count my chickens before they hatch. It's been a crazy experience to think like, oh, I'll just like start this podcast. And then all of a sudden I'm like in LA and I'm meeting with these like all these different places and people and, going out, we've shot footage and it's been an incredible experience.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I mean, it's cool whenever, kind of car adjacent stuff sort of bubbles up, right? Into the larger sort of culture. Because that doesn't always happen.
Especially things that are not just like you said, like just, horsepower figures, like this,
right.
Right. Like things that kind of cast that wide net and don't kind of operate in just a silo of just a car and that's it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible to think like when there was a point where we were meeting with other production companies because they have their own production company. We were sort of exploring that, like, well, do we need to partner with another production company? So we were taking all these meetings out in LA with that. And some people, you sort of sit down for a meeting and everyone's like, I binged Tempest. I loved it. It's great. Right. And they seemed to really get it. And I'll never forget this one meeting. Obviously, I'm not going to be specific about who it was with, but in fact, I'd be hard pressed to remember their name at this point. But they were a big production company, and the guys were like, "Loved your show, binged it, so good. Just really got it, really, really got it." Okay. Yeah, okay, great, yeah, good. One thing is the episodes are kind of long, okay, and you're envisioning the episodes here to be maybe on the longer side. What if they were about 8 minutes? And then what if there was some sort of a contest involved in each episode? Like a race and I was just like, I remember like at that point, there were 4 of us, including me, because there was another guy there with us on our team. And just like all of us looking at each other, like, are we being pranked right now? Like, love your human interest documentary. What if it was condensed down to 8 minutes and it was a contest? Okay.
Right,
yeah,
right.
That works. Sure.
And you play mini golf. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Just throw in anything they want in there.
And cars are kind of niche, so get rid of the cars.
Right.
It's like, what brings out the best in humanity? Reality television.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, that was great. I mean, I was like, wow, that was. I felt glad to have that experience, so I could come away from like that phase of the development process with like one good ridiculous Hollywood story.
Right.
I was like, this is almost worth it.
And thankfully that wasn't your only meeting, right?
No, right, exactly.
Well, that must have been just a weird thing too, because like, Dave and I are both IT guys, and this is all sort of like our creative outlet, right? But you as a creative person, you're most of your creative endeavors are kind of you by yourself, like, you have control over them.
Yeah.
So it must have been weird to then be in this situation where like you're potentially just giving it to somebody else to like do, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is that Keith and Rachel, I should have mentioned her name before. Rachel Griffin is Keith's wife, who's the producer. And I should say Rachel has been like the person I work with on a nearly day-to-day basis and have for years now. I cannot say enough good things about her. She's brilliant. And she really throws herself into a subject. So, she liked cars from the beginning, but she was like, when she decided like this could make a good show, she was like, I'm diving into cars.
Okay.
But with Keith and Rachel, there is that sort of like, okay, like this is my thing. And they're very respectful of my creative baby kind of thing. But also I respect them so much creatively and as, professionals. So it's a little easier with them, but yes, going into a meeting where you're just like, you get let into a conference room and then 2 guys sit down and they're like, turn into a contest. There is a part of you that's like, 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 wants to make, like, you should throw holy water at them and be like, no, back up. Get away from me. Get away from my baby.
I cast thee out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's not like, it's not the easiest thing to hear.
Right.
But yeah, there was another one, maybe it was the same company, I can't remember, who had suggested, while I was a great host of Tempest, like a really, attractive woman, possibly we could play with that, where instead of having me on camera, we could just get like a really attractive woman. That was cause for many jokes after when we had drinks after the meeting and we're doing our sort of debrief. The idea of just like this 8-minute show with a contest hosted by a woman in a bikini. So great. Tempest.
It's like Idiocracy. It's like just a complete, like the lowest common denominator of base entertainment, right?
Yeah, I should note that if we went with that, I would probably be a millionaire right now.
Right. But
I didn't.
You're not compromising your artistic vision.
Exactly. Yeah. I have that, damn it.
Yes.
Chase Bank will take, I write that on a paper every week. I stuff it into the ATM.
Right.
You'd be Ricky Gervais in the second season of Extras, and David Bowie would have to sit down and sing a disparaging song about you.
Yeah, exactly. Again, almost be worth it.
Right, exactly. I mean, lots of people make that decision, so you'd be in good company, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So, so you mentioned season 3 of the podcast was in pre-production.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be kind of the same sort of scope as seasons 1 and 2, or is it going to be?
Yes.
8 minutes long. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. Aside from
more
the contest. Right. It's going to be a lot of the same things. There's been some stories that I've worked on like for a couple of years now that I don't feel like I've been able to do it justice, and I've wanted to further develop them. So unfortunately, there's been some people who I've interviewed, and they've been so patient with me and have given me their time, and then season 2 aired, and I'm just like, sorry, the story just isn't right, and I don't want to air a story that I don't feel good about.
Sure.
Not that I don't have my favorites, but I feel like I need to put my best foot forward on every story. So there's a few episodes that I'm hoping, I've had more time, and then some new ones. But yeah, human stories. I mean, that's it, and that could take a lot of different forms. So I put out a call on Twitter recently to my followers, and I'll say this just because this has always been one of these stories that I've always wanted to chase down because it seems simple on the face of it. So I'll say it here in case any of your viewers, listeners will have anything for me. But I want to do an episode about, and I have so many people have written to me about this, but I don't know that I have the right combination of stories or the right single story. So with that preamble, I really want to do a story about sex and cars because the two are so synonymous, right? Like This is not a combination. This is not like some brand new combination no one's ever thought of. In fact, it's like, it's cliche, but have we ever really explored that? Like, or is it just always like your cliche, like cars are sexy and people making out in the backseat? I want to hear real stories. And while I'm not against like someone writing me like a truly sexy, like erotic experience that they want to tell me about, and it can all be anonymous, like I'm not looking for that. Like I'm not looking for some salacious thing. There's a lot of opportunity for there to be like funny, embarrassing stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity, and I'm not trying to take advantage of anything here. I'm not trying to be exploitative, but there could be experiences that are, unpleasant, traumatic, that people want to talk about. I'm not trying to wrest those out of people, if they want to explore them. there's all different forms that can take. So that's
Right.
like one of those stories as an example where I'm like, I've been working on that one for years, and I've come very close to being like, I've got it, but it's not quite there yet. And I really want to get that right.
Well, I listened to the Greta episode earlier today,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And so you do mention in that was kind of the initial premise, or kind of an element of the initial contact with Greta, right?
Yes, she had responded to me because of that. I had earlier put out that call, and she said, I have a story about that. And then she told me her story, and I felt like this is its own thing.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
yeah, I felt honored that she trusted me to tell that story. And, I felt concerned for her. I took a lot of measures to try to protect her. And,
Sure.
but it's one of my favorite episodes. I mean, talk about the human experience,
Right.
And unfortunately, not a good one.
Right. But like all of these kinds of stories, like there's a car running through it, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah. Right. But, that episode was so great. I don't want to say anything for anybody who hasn't heard it. You absolutely need to go listen to it. It's fantastic. Yeah. So what do you think initially kind of like set the stage for like feeling the need to kind of chase down like a sex and cars, like a through line there?
Well, I think, I've written about a lot of things that are so one-off. They're so, the thing that really kind of gave me my big jump into the sort of automotive writing world was this essay I wrote for Jalopnik about a guy who was leading a double life, and he embezzled like $500,000 to buy 50 of the exact same BMW, and he had them hidden all over the state. By the way, the state of Colorado. And I wrote that for Jalopnik.
Okay.
And I knew I had a good story on my hand, and I loved Jalopnik at that point. I had written for Deadspin. I had written for Gawker review of books, but I was a Jalopnik reader probably, as much, if not more than the other sites. And so Patrick George was the editor back then, and I think I had maybe even pitched him on some other essays, but it didn't quite work. But I was like, oh, I know this is a good one. And they were like, okay, yeah, this sounds interesting. Well, I had no idea. I mean, I wrote this essay, and like it went viral. I remember walking my kids to school the day that it published, or maybe at this point, maybe it was the day after it published. And people like getting to the school and then being like, you're into cars. I just read the craziest essay. And it would be like people that you would never in the world would be thinking like reading automotive essays. And it was kind of like, I wrote that thing, and it was covered in, in Australia, it was on MSN. It was just like everywhere. It exploded. And it was great. And I love that story. But it was also like, so like, so you start searching for these stories that are like, there's never going to be another one of these. This is just like, I'm going to find another one of these, like just insane things. But I think there's a flip side to that coin, and that's the sex and cars type stories, which is like a universal experience. But then, embezzling $500,000 and buying 50 BMW 2002s is not a universal experience, right? So,
right,
like sex and cars kind of is. What that experience looks like is different depending on the person.
Right.
I think it's that flip side of the coin that I'm after.
Gotcha. Okay.
That makes sense. And I do think that the one thing that is sort of similar about like people who, because there is lots of stories about people embezzling money to do things with cars, or, especially like in racing or stuff like that. Right. And the sex and cars thing is that, it's, especially now, it's, the car is like one of the only places where we're somewhat sort of unaccountable. Like we can't like talk on the phone, or, it's harder to be reached. It's like one of the only places you can be that you're like unreachable now.
Right.
So I think that probably plays into some of that too, right? Like that's sort of the link between criming and the sexing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, that's an interesting point too, because I think there's probably some people where it's like, and maybe it's not even just like people, like a type person, but where you are in your life, if you're in high school, your car gives you this, like, this is like my little space.
Yep,
this
your
is
bubble.
private. Yeah, like I can drive to a secluded spot with my girlfriend, and like, but if you're not in that stage, like you may be a person who's kind of like, what is the opposite of voyeuristic? I'm totally blanking here, but you may be like
the person on the other side of the voyeuristic.
Yeah, like a person who
like an exhibitionist.
An exhibitionist, right? So a person who's like, I don't want to be in the privacy of my home.
Right.
Let's go into a car, and like, so I mean, and I did get some of those stories where I was just like, this is wild. Like people do this in their cars to be like, kind of like exhibitionists, which I hadn't even considered.
Right.
Because I had always been thinking of it in terms of you, like you're disconnected. This is your little bubble.
Right.
But then you see it from the glass house perspective, right?
Exactly. And it literally is a glass house on wheels.
Right. Yeah. No,
it is
no
so
tint,
too.
no factory installed option,
Right.
no tint. Yeah.
Right.
Sunroof open.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like too, like how people's relationship with cars is so tied up in, how they develop in that part of their life, especially in America, where you're starting at 16 or whatever, and that's such a crazy time of change. But yeah, to me, it was a refuge, right? It was a private place. It was my only private place, and to me, that's just like, that's what makes sense. But you're right. Other people would think of it as like a way to socialize, and that wouldn't occur to me.
Right. Yeah, totally. God,
I was just happy. Oh, go ahead. Seth.
No. I was just going to say, I mean, I can remember me in my first car, and just that was its own thing. I mean, it was the worst car in the world, but it was just like, I can just remember just, it was an indescribable thing. Certainly would have not thought of it as like I'm an exhibitionist, so I'm going to now like use my car for that.
Right.
But
so now
like,
I can be mobile and show people.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, it was.
What was your first car?
It was a 1984 Honda Accord, which probably on the face of it sounds like solid car. That would go for $78,000 on Bring a Trailer now.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Which it probably does. But so just to be clear about this, I grew up in New Jersey. You had to be 17 to get your license. So I turned 17 in early 1996. So when I got the 84 Accord, it was 1996. It was over 10 years old at this point. The 1984 Honda Accord was the last year that the good people at Honda decided to not use fuel injection. So this was, but what they decided was they were going to really innovate things with this 3-barrel carburetor. And that carburetor, I say that carburetor, I got like a new carburetor constantly. The car would not, it wouldn't idle. It wouldn't start. It would idle at 4 trillion RPM. It would stall out no matter what. It was the worst thing ever. And unfortunately, I had an automatic transmission, which I was raised to, like, my dad was like, you're going to learn how to drive stick before you get your license or anything, just so you know. So I got, I knew how to drive stick, but this was an automatic. The transmission was terrible, and the transmission failed. So I had this like car where it was like stalled constantly. The idle was You would adjust it. It wouldn't do anything. No mechanic understood how it worked. It was like they would look at it and be like, "What is this carburetor?" And then the transmission fails, and you're just like, "Dude, I am like a junior in high school, and this car, like, I get it. It's supposed to suck, but it's not supposed to like be that confusing. Like, it's a Honda Accord, man. It's so
Right.
But it was freedom.
It was freedom. And I could remember very clearly to this day in New Jersey in the summers, because the thing would overheat constantly, going up at the top of the hill, slamming it. I literally get like a little bit of like flashbacks of this, and I realized how stupid I was. I would put it in neutral and then kill the engine as I went down the hill trying to cool the engine off, and just like, okay, just get down to the bottom of the hill and then turn the engine back on. It's just like,
you wanted the water in the radiator to be cold, but the water in the block to just be boiling hot when you got to the bottom.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly. No concept of how all I thought was like wind rushing, but that was the only way I thought that the only way that I could keep the thing from overheating. Definitely a good way to like lose all control of your car.
Sure. Yeah.
Was anyone ever in the car with you when you did that? And like, did anyone push back on that?
No, but probably, I mean, everyone was an idiot.
Well, yeah.
Right.
I mean, everyone was dumb back then.
Right.
Like, God, if I have 2 kids now. If they did that, I would kill them.
They're just hitting the button on their first Prius to turn it off on the way down the hill.
So we have a 2009 Prius, and we should be getting rid of it and getting another car. But there is part of me that's just like, maybe I should just hold on to this. This should be like the kid's first car.
See?
But then I have another car. You guys know I have another car. I have a 79 Alfa Romeo.
Oh.
And
what type? Is it
you would think it's a Spider, wouldn't you? 79 Alfa Romeo. You would think,
I guess.
Spider. It's a sports sedan.
Oh.
Let me refresh your memory in case it doesn't conjure an image. You know the John Hughes classic Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Yeah. His friend Cameron.
Is this Cameron's vehicle?
Yeah, and he says, Cameron, we have to go pick up Sloan, so we have to take the Ferrari. And he says, we're not taking. And what does Ferris say to Cameron? He says, Rooney would never believe that Sloane's dad drives that piece of shit. And then it doesn't specify what kind of car it is, but then it shows Cameron in his driveway, sort of like trying to figure out, like, should I go? Should I stay?
Right,
should I go?
Like shaking. Yeah.
Yes. And he's sitting in my car.
That's hilarious.
Okay. All right.
I mean, and it is the most like Frankenstein thing ever. Instead of like actual interior, it's got diamond plate, sheet metal.
Okay. All right.
Door cards.
Okay.
It's got a 5-speed manual, so fun for the kids to learn on someday.
Yes.
God knows it's not fast, so it's not exactly like this thing goes 0 to 60 in about 5 minutes.
Did that come with a 5-speed, or was it a 4-speed originally?
No, it came with a 5-speed.
Oh, interesting.
Although I should note, technically the engine is it's out of an 87 Spider. So
okay.
It is cool though. This car, to nerd out on car stuff, is an Alfetta. So this car is sibling to the GTV.
Okay.
Yeah. So that badass GTV that you see that you're like, that is sweet. This is just like the sedan version of it. It's rear wheel drive. It's got the transaxle, the inboard brakes.
And is it the same 2-liter? Or
it's a 2-liter. It's a 2-liter engine, 4-cylinder. Inline 4, 2-liter, and 5-speed. It's fun.
We need to make an adorable, like the most adorable snowdrift video with you.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
right?
take it out. I take it out in our little. We live, I won't say where we live publicly, but in Denver, and on days like this where it's like snowy, it's very cranky. It does not like to start when it's cold, so I have to keep like a heat lamp underneath the oil pan because I don't have a heated garage, and it's it's old.
Sure.
It's
You take care of it. You take care of it.
Exactly. It's like me. It was literally, you look at the manufacturer plate on the door. It was born March 79. I was born March 79.
Oh, fantastic.
I know how hard it is to wake up in the morning.
Right.
So why
Joints
should
are
that
creaky.
be different? Exactly.
Yeah.
But once it gets up and going, whip it around the corner in the snow.
Right. Does it have an even number of barrels of carburetor?
It's because it's got the 87. Yeah, it's because it's got the 87 engine. It's actually got a Bosch L-Jet.
Oh, great.
Fuel injection.
Okay.
So my life's slightly simplified. Although the trade-off there is it doesn't have as much, oomph.
Sure.
I basically talked to a lot of people. I'm like, how can I like really juice this thing more? I mean, it goes fast if you get it on the interstate and you give it time. It'll go really fast, but it's so slow off the line. And they're just like, yeah, with the L-Jet, it's just like, it is what it is. You can literally slam your foot to the floor and the revs are like, like a cat yawning.
How did you come across this vehicle? How long have you had it, this sports sedan?
I've had it. So I've had it for over like a year, maybe a little over a year. I don't know. So I was in LA and we're working on the show. We're going to so many meetings. Just like there was a time where it was like just constant meetings,
Sure.
And not like just the fun meetings where we're talking about the show with like my collaborators, but like meeting with industry people. And it's always like we walk in the room and there's, hey, this is Rachel Griffin and she produced these things. And oh yeah, I've seen that. That's amazing. This is Keith Gordon. By the way, Keith Gordon played Arnie in Christine, classic car movie.
Okay.
So
wow.
So you see him and you're like, I know that guy. And then you're like, oh, and you directed all this stuff. And then there's me. And they're like, okay, now who's this guy? Oh, this is David. He's the guy who started Tempest. Oh, he's the car guy. Yeah. And they're always like,
he's the guy who was late because he was pushing his Alfa Romeo the rest of the way to the meeting.
See, they would be like, what do you drive? And I'd be like, well, I drive a 2009 Prius. My wife and I share it. And I mean, I've been wanting a car for a long time. Like, this is a little thing to mess around with. And my wife is like super supportive. And I think it was like, I'd come home from these meetings and I would tell her that story. And she got to the point where it was like, she was like, you should do it. You should finally get a car. But we didn't really have a lot of money. So I was kind of open to anything that looked interesting.
Sure.
And this thing, because it's Frankenstein, it's a sports sedan, which is not like a collectible model in the first place. And it's not original. It's not in great shape even. Was like pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And I took Andrew Collins, reviews editor of Jalopnik. I took him with me to look at it.
Okay.
But it was like rebuilt by a guy who runs an Alpha shop. And he rebuilt it for his son as a commuter car. It's just because his son had to get back and forth to the airport every day.
Okay.
And because he was like a luggage guy. And his son was like, I'm not fucking driving this stick.
In LA traffic. Yeah.
Yeah. And his dad was like, I built this Alfa Romeo from like 5 different Alfa Romeos and you don't want it?
Just for
like,
you.
Who's going to buy this fucking thing?
Right?
I am.
Yeah. Enter David.
David with his meager bank account.
I don't know, Dad. You'll find some other car idiot to buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that's how, oh, by the way, and I showed up and I was like, oh, this guy's got a sweet Opel GT. And he was like, yeah, I put an Alpha like 2.5 liter in it. And he was like, this fucking thing. He's like, I've literally like lifted off in it. Like, dude, that Opel GT, like I could pick it up with one hand. He's just like,
those cars are so cool.
I know. I know. He was like, "Do you want to buy it?" I was like, "No, dude, I'm not buying 2 cars from you."
I love that he's asking. Yeah. I don't think anybody's ever asked me if I was going to purchase a second car.
I mean,
Yeah,
you got one on the hook. You gotta make hay, right?
I know. He was probably like, "Dude, because this Alpha is so cheap. Come on, really? Would you like, it's like a buy one get one free practically. Buy the Opel GT. I'll throw the Alpha in.
You could tow the Opel with the Alpha.
Yeah, you could put it in the trunk."
I think that there's a lot to be said for owning the not like best version of a car, like to have that. So much. Like I have a super rusty Saab Viggen. Ian has an R32 with tons of peeling paint, and like I think that this really fits in, right? Like this, like
Volkswagen R32. I should be clear, not a Nissan R32.
Right,
that's a common mistake that people make.
But I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you might edit this out.
I can guarantee you we won't.
Okay. I was driving around Denver the other week. It was behind an R32.
Okay.
And the plate was just R's. It was just R. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, that is not me. That is not me. No.
Because it wasn't that rusty, but
mine's not rusty. It just has the.
Oh, your Viggen is rusty.
Yes. Yeah. The paint peel, the clear coat has completely peeled.
Oh, so you're not the all R, but do you know the all R's guy?
I don't. I love have that. Only. So I've lived in Denver like 9.5 years, and I've had my R32 the whole time. The only like Volkswagen people that I've run into like at Cars and Coffee or anything like that are people with like the only other Volkswagens I see at Cars and Coffee have vape pens in the console. And so like I feel like I've aged out of my own car a little bit, which is unfortunate, but
it's a cool car. I get excited every time I see it. And as for the Viggen, that's amazing. I have a good friend who from college, and I didn't know he was a car guy. We went to college together. We never talked about cars, never once. Okay. Then he hears Tempest, and he's like, "Wait, dude, you're a car guy?"
Okay.
Like we played like crazy punk music the whole time, and I was like, "Well, yeah." And he was like, "Yo, I am such a car guy." I am so jealous of this guy. He's the nicest guy. He deserves it more than most people. He's not. He's got 2 Viggens.
They're best in pairs. No, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. He also has a Peugeot 505.
Yes. That is fantastic. I mean, yeah. That little angry eyes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a dream car.
Yeah.
The Viggen is a dream car. So I applaud you both.
Well, thank you.
Look at that. Turbo diesel.
We should absolutely do an Apex adjacent team drive. Yeah, very.
Yes.
Yeah, we can help each other as we break down. Right.
Bring your AAA cards. Let's do it.
Yeah. No, there's so much to be said for enjoying the thing for what it is. Right. Like as the owner of the Alpha, do you encounter like a lot of folks that are like, well, why didn't you get a blah blah blah? Why didn't you get a?
I'm going to give you a hot take here. Alpha owners suck.
Well, I mean, they're called the Alfetti, right?
No, Alfisti?
Alfisti? Oh boy. Yeah. See. Yeah.
So that's like the Alpha people. And if someone is like, I'm an Alfisti, or if they learn that I've got an Alfa, they're like, oh, so you're an Alfisti too? I'm immediately just like, okay, we're definitely not going to be friends.
That gives me like a weird Eyes Wide Shut vibe, like that I don't want to be part of that. Like, no, dude, I don't want to see you naked with a mask on. Like,
exactly. That is the same vibe that I get. It is very, it's very snobbish.
Yeah.
It's super snobbish. So truthfully, my thing with my car, I love my car.
Yeah.
And it's also was originally red, and they repainted it just like this gray. It just looks like gray. It's rusted and gray. It's like
I love
the
it.
diamond plates, aluminum. And like most times people are just openly like, even if like they don't know who I am, they're openly just like, look at that piece of shit. It's just like, cool. But like the thing that's awesome, like whatever, I don't care, but like the thing that's great about it is that like every once in a while, someone is just like, yo, what is that?
Yes.
And like I was coming back from the grocery store the other day, and I was driving on, I think it was Quebec Street. This guy in like a WRX, just thing looked like it was ready for the racetrack.
Right.
Just like, I mean, like it would go 1,000 miles an hour. Pulls up next to me, just like engine is super loud, and he like rolls down his window, which of course I have to crank, and he's like, yo, that thing is awesome. Like, and the dude was so psyched. And I was like, oh, and the best was he like revs his engine. And I was like, yeah, like revved my engine back, light turned green. And he's like, takes off. And I'm like trying to catch up. And the dude was so sweet. He like hit the brakes, let me catch up. And then we got like even with each other.
You got a traffic buddy, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I'm like that. I come home. I'm like, I met someone who likes my car. He gets it. But then the other like big thing that I get that's super funny is like people will just like, they just think it's a BMW.
Sure.
And I mean, look at that thing, right?
Right.
To be honest, I haven't seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off in years and years and years. And in my mind, he's sitting in a BMW in that.
Okay. See,
like, because I think I just remember the headlights and that's it.
Exactly. Like I've had many occasions both in LA and Denver where people literally are I'm like chatting with them and they're like, that's a great car. Yeah. What kind of car is that? And I'm like, it's an Alpha Sports sedan. And they're like, yes, I love those old BMWs. And I'm just like, right. Yeah, no, it's an Alpha. And they're like, oh yeah, it is.
No beta BMWs here.
Exactly. Just like, that's cool. Like whatever. I'm not gonna shatter anyone's dreams.
Right.
It's like it's an M5.
Yeah. Is it more important to be correct or nice?
Right, exactly. I always go for nice, unless you're an Alfisti.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. That's so fantastic.
So you talking about the Alfisti is reminded me. So this is something that we've talked about with a few of our guests on the show, and we've talked about a lot, is kind of like the culture of car forums, and you can tell a lot about about the owners of cars by how they behave on the forums. Like, like VW Vortex has a very specific sort of toxic culture to it, which is totally different than the toxic culture of like the Corvette forums or whatever. Yeah. So I can only imagine, because I'm assuming you've had to fix this at some point.
Yes.
You've had to wade in to the Alfa Romeo forums. What was that like?
Well, it's a sort of an ongoing thing, and it's definitely, a lot of people are condescending.
Okay. All right.
And they sort of like, I would say like, when you give people the benefit of the doubt, it's like the opposite. Like they treat you like, so I'm going to go ahead and assume you've made every terrible decision. Like every decision you ever made has been the worst one, starting with the fact that you got a sports sedan.
And luckily you found me. And I'm here to impart my wisdom.
Right. But then the other thing that's like pretty apparent is like, this assumption that you're just like really rich, which is to get back to that Alfisti thing where you're just like, yeah, we're kind of like, listen, I'm having like problem with like the battery or, whatever. I've had so many problems with this thing. And they're just like, oh, well, you should do. And they'll just like suggest something where you're just like, that literally costs more than the car cost in the first place. Right. To get it fucking started. I will push start it. I don't care. I just need it to run.
Right.
But, and the Alfistis are just like Yeah, you're obviously a millionaire. What country club are you from?
Have your car concierge contact so and so?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Like, are you using the right like leather conditioner? Could that be the problem? You know, like, oh, you might try a different leather. Like, no, I'm talking about the motor oil. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Okay.
and also they don't drive their cars very much.
Gotcha.
You're just like, I've got a GTV. It's got like 8,000 miles. I think it's a 78 or whatever, like an 80. And you're just like, yeah, my thing has rolled the odometer 3 times. Like I literally am like any errand that I have to do, I'm like, I'm taking the Alpha. I'm putting the fucking heat lamp on it.
Yeah.
Taking the car. My wife the other day was like, like you don't have to drive the car in like really bad weather. I'm like, why? It's great.
That's hilarious.
Fucking, door doesn't shut right. One window works.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. But then like our other car is like the most boring pedestrian car ever, the 2009 Prius. It's not even a new Prius. So I've had to go on the Prius forums, and even those are fucking snobby.
Well, so you said,
but they're but in a different way.
Yeah. So I think what I was coming from VW Vortex. So I've told this story, I'm going to say 100 times on this podcast. I'm about to tell it again, unless Dave wants to. But I was getting picked up from the Denver airport, and I got like a lift home. This is obviously like a few years ago. And this Prius pulls up, Lyft driver. I get in the back, and we make it, at the Denver airport. There's, you're on the top deck. By the time we get off that top deck, I am 100% certain that he has a rear wheel bearing that's about to explode at any moment. Because I'm sitting on top of it, right? And it's just like, thump, 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 thump.
Oh God.
And then I like him having like this existential crisis of like, do I say, hey, service worker, fix your car so we don't, careen off the highway and both die? Like which one of those things is most important in that?
Yes,
scenario?
Karen, did you ask for the manager or did you just decide to finish the ride?
Right. Yeah. So I didn't say anything, but what I did do while I was weighing, how much I should let this person know that their car was about to fall apart, was I went on the Prius forums and was like, I wonder how much it costs to like fix a wheel bearing in a Prius, because I don't know. And I went on there and I found a post where somebody asked a question about fixing a wheel bearing. And then the next post, as someone who is used to reading car forums, the craziest thing happened. Someone answered their question. Like,
oh, wow.
It was just an answer to the question that was asked, which is just never happens, right? There was no like, here's how you use the search function.
Right.
Or
you didn't fill out your profile correctly.
Right, exactly. There was none of that. It was just it was like 3 posts. It was a question, an answer, and a thank you. And that was it.
Well, so
this is amazing.
The Prius forum, because our Prius does also have problems because obviously it's my car, so it's got to. That actually is really helpful. I have like posted a lot. What I found about the Prius forum is like, it's like a metrics driven kind of a society. Like people are just like collecting data on their car. Like this is like, every last like, how many miles did I go? What's the voltage on the battery the last time and it's, so you post a question and occasionally they're just like, well, what was the voltage last time? And you're just like, I don't fucking know. Something started
I'm
and
not
then I turned it off.
aggregating data constantly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, well, didn't you go into the diagnostic screen would have told you that. And it's just like, people are like regularly going in the diagnostic screen. Like I've been in that screen. It's really boring.
Right.
But the other day, let me tell you something. You remember how cold it was a couple days ago?
Yeah, like
it was like
-9.
-9, right?
Yeah.
So my wife had to go out for a minute, and she's like, yeah, the car won't start again, which is like has been a problem with the Prius, but I thought I fixed it. I did fix it. So I was like, all right, I went out there, like the electric turned on, like the electrical system turned on, but the engine wouldn't go. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the fuck, man? I'm trying to figure it out. And I literally thought to myself, maybe I should go on the forum. Didn't do it. Because what I said
Abstained.
was they would want me to go to the diagnostic screen. So I swear to God, true story. For the Prius to hit the diagnostic screen, you got to hold down the info button and hit the headlight switch 3 times.
I love those kinds of interfaces. Those are the best.
Yeah, exactly. Toyota doesn't really want you to know that.
Right.
Unless you're going to really use it.
Yeah.
So I did it. Exactly. So I did that. And I get to the diagnostic screen and I'm like, okay, it's a pretty new battery, but let's just check the voltage on it. I go to the battery screen. And as soon as I'm in the diagnostics thing, the engine starts. And it was almost like the Prius was like, you did it.
Yeah.
You finally learned diagnostics.
You've been trained. You've been trained. Yeah.
I was like, I came in, I was like, I fixed the car.
Yeah.
Sarah's like, it's awesome. Like, great job. Like, what'd you do? And I'm like, I can't tell you. It's
as you're eating the food pellet that the car spit out for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say your car also posted on the forum on his own profile.
Yeah.
He's one of ours now.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He has been assimilated.
Yeah, exactly.
You finally got the positive reinforcement. That's amazing, David. That's amazing.
I don't know if I can part with it now.
Yeah, right?
I've been in a diagnostic screen.
You are the diagnostic screen.
Exactly. Very intimate.
Yeah. All those numbers.
Yeah, just numbers. Just
exposed.
Like plain text. Oof. Just numbers.
Just
as you roll into that CarMax to get the appraisal, it's gonna say to you, I showed you my diagnostics.
Yeah.
And you bring me a CarMax.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be Hal all over again.
Oh man. No, that's fantastic. Oh. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that we did want to do was play a quick game of FMK cars.
Okay.
So this is a game that we play on the show all the time. It's based on the kind of classic game of Fuck, Marry, Kill, but we play it with cars instead of people because we're not gross.
Yeah, we're not disgusting human beings.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so this is one from kind of like our archives that we did a long time ago, but I thought it was appropriate because of your sort of literary bent on writing. So often with these, we'll give like a twist with each car that goes along with each car. And this is kind of a literary one. So this one is called, the title of this is called, Let's Drive the Fuck Out of This Future, Cars Mired in Dystopia. So these are going to get a dystopian existence that you have to live with the car. All right. So the first one is a McLaren P1. However, the Kurt Vonnegut short story, Harrison Bergeron, is true. So your car cannot be faster than anyone else's, and you can only drive as well as your worst ever Uber driver.
I think I'm going to kill that one.
Well, here you got to hear the rest of them because they typically they don't.
I get it. I've told you the cars that I drive. So. Okay.
All right. So that's your first option. All right. So the second option.
Oh, so it's a McLaren that doesn't go fast and I drive really poorly.
Correct.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Welcome to the show. All right. So the second one, your second option. So you're going to get, you get 3 options and you got to select FMK for each one. The next one is the coolest Range Rover Classic you can possibly think of. However, you live in the world of Fahrenheit 451. And all service instructions for old Range Rovers have been deemed illegal and have been scrubbed from the earth.
Okay.
So there is no documentation on how to fix
I like this game. Okay.
your broken Range Rover. All right.
Okay.
The last one, Ford Focus RS. but A Clockwork Orange is true. So you drive the RS like crazy, but the authorities constantly mistake you for an ultra-violent youth.
Okay.
Oh, you dropped out. They constantly mistake you for an ultra-violent youth.
Yes, the authorities mistake you for an ultra-violent youth, so they're always after you.
Okay, well, I'm
sorry, and I should explain too.
Okay.
I forgot to explain the rest of the game. So F means you drive it for a day.
Right.
So
I was going to ask you what an effing car would be, but I sort of assumed that would be it.
Yeah, you drive it for a day. M is it's your new daily driver, and K means you crush it. Goes to the crusher.
Yes. Okay. Let's do it.
Okay.
Easy.
Okay.
Easy.
Let's hear it.
Easy. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Where do you want me to start? You want me to start with FM or
you
K?
pick it. You pick it.
Yeah. Start with leave your funniest explanation for last.
I don't know what's funny. I'm not a funny person, so I'm going to say that the K, I'm going to kill the McLaren.
Yeah. Okay.
The McLaren, subjectively speaking, okay, I don't think they're even good-looking cars. McLarens have never really done anything for me. Okay. I understand that they don't need. I can't afford them anyway, so they're fine.
What are the McLaren forums like?
Right. Yeah. Okay, so like the only redeeming quality would be that it's really fast. So you've taken away its only redeeming quality. Get rid of it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go to the Ford Focus. Now, that is going to be my F car.
Okay.
And here's why. I've owned a couple Fords. I hate Fords because they're less reliable than my Honda 84 Accord.
Okay.
But aside from that, this is a cool car. I don't really hate Fords, but I've had bad experiences in terms of trying to daily Fords. This is a very, very cool car. It would be foolish of me to drive a car knowing I'm going to get constantly harassed by the police.
Right.
So I'll have a lot of fun driving it one time for a day. It'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Right.
Now,
play GTA for a day. Yeah.
Yeah. You're thinking Range Rover as your daily.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't even read the manual. That's foolish. No, it's not. No, it's not. First of all,
please tell us why.
Because the manual is written by the people who made it. Okay? So, what is that going to get you?
What?
Think about it, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You have a point. You have a point.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
If they thought that was the right way to do a thing, you're not going to continue taking advice from the people that told you that thing.
So instead, I'm just going to go to the Fahrenheit 451 version of Twitter and my text, and just, send GIFs or GIFs, however you pronounce them, just, images to people like you guys or Andrew Collins. Sure. That would say, how do I fix this? It's overheated again, or, the fuel pump is dead. And they can help me out better than the manual can.
Right.
Well, I feel like you cheated a little bit, but I appreciate the
Where was the cheat?
The Range Rover Whisper network is not a cheat. Yeah, that is yeah.
Wait, is that the cheat that you perceive, Ian?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, well, even if you took out the Whisper network, still, I stand by the fact that you take away the manuals, you're not really taking away much.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's an interesting point. I think you're probably right. I never thought about it that way, but yeah. And I suppose you could just slowly, it could become the ship from the one thing, and you just slowly replace parts until it's a different thing altogether. Donald
Trump hands you an instruction manual and says, here is how you can fix America. And you say, but you're the problem.
Right.
And he goes, yes, but here's a manual. I wrote it.
I want a manual. I just don't want yours.
Right. And you're just like, but now we're going in circles. I want another manual.
Somewhere a Range Rover engineer is very unhappy with being compared unfavorably to Donald Trump.
Ian, they couldn't figure out how to open the YouTube. It's fine.
The fact is I think these are really cool cars. My son is almost 10, and we took him to Europe, and he saw a bunch of, we went on just a trip to Europe, and he saw a bunch of old Defenders, and every time he would see a Defender, he would just freak out.
Yeah.
I think they're awesome cars. I actually have no idea about the reliability. I'm assuming because of the joke you guys made that, but that's the thing. That's the thing about Alfa Romeos. They're the leakiest cars in the world. And it's okay, so if I want to fix a leak, am I going to ask an Alfa engineer?
Right.
Fucking last person I'm going to ask.
Right. They already think it's acceptable to leak a liter of oil, every 500 miles or whatever. Right.
I used to joke in LA, the guy I was going to get a shirt for him. Every time I would have a problem with the Alfa, I'd call the guy who I bought it from, who's he's an Alfa guy. And I would be like, oh, it's doing this. And he would go, Alfa does that.
Just Alfa does that.
Alfa does that.
Okay.
Alfa does that. I'd be like, oh, literally at one point I was like, the brakes locked up on me, and he's like, yeah, Alfa does that. He's just oh, okay. I thought it was a serious problem. He's like, no, Alfa does that. Oh, okay, good.
I want a world where you just keep calling him with escalating things, and my eyes are bleeding. Alfa does that.
Yeah, exactly. Human body does that. Yeah. Okay. Apparently it does. By the way, it's Los Angeles, California, 75 degrees, and I'm like, the brakes are just locked. Oh, it's fine. Cool. I'm gonna move to Colorado where it's -9. That ought to be good.
What could go wrong?
Right.
Okay. I was going to ask you, given kind of their reputation for leaking fluids, how are you doing a heat lamp under the car
safely?
Yeah. How does that? Is there a point where the heat lamp is there so long that the fluids become fluid enough to leak onto the heat lamp?
Apparently not, but I do worry about that sometimes. Because it's definitely the slight paranoid part of me is just am I gonna get to sleep tonight?
Right.
But I mean, I have the heat lamp sort of angled, in front of the oil pan, but sort of angled up at it. It's not leaking out of the bumper, it's
right.
leaking sort of, and it's only slight. And it's not leaking gasoline. It's leaking a little bit of, I don't know, motor oil.
Yeah, sure. I think the fire department will really enjoy that explanation.
I think
they put the fire out. I think they'll like that.
Guys, Alfa does that. Alfa burns down your house.
If you just Skype that guy in, just hold up your phone.
What happened here? The whole block is on fire. Oh, let me call my mechanic. Alfa does that.
If you need us to edit,
you're free to go, sir.
Edit any of this out because it's evidence in a court case. Just let us know.
Well, I was in the beginning. I was angling it down. I had clamped it to the underside of the hood. And then my father-in-law, he's a car guy. He restored a 78 FJ40 completely. A random guy was driving by, fell in love with it, begged him sell it to me. My father-in-law, he cannot resist a project. So he was like, okay, I'll sell it to you and then I'll get myself a new project. So he just bought a 53 or something, mid-50s Chevy 3100, which he's doing a frame off restoration by himself. And he was like, what you ought to do is put that heat lamp underneath the car because heat rises. And I was like, well, damn, that's pretty smart. And then I was like, this fucking guy is so smart, man. My father-in-law knows his shit. And then I get home and I was like, oh, fuck. but what about all the stuff that leaks out of the bottom of it? It's like, that's not great.
I like how those weren't variables in his equation, in his head. Right?
No, exactly.
Then
Well,
math
'cause
changed.
He's restoring Toyotas and Chevys. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's got it. Like my mechanic's catchphrase back in LA was "Alpha does that." My father-in-law is like, "Oh hell, he's great." He's like, he's the kind of guy you're like, oh, like I think I just broke the house. Like he's a contractor. He's just like, "Oh my god, I broke the house." And you call me, he's like, "Oh hell, you fix anything."
It's all just bolts. It's all just parts and pieces.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like, but what if the Alpha catches on fire? He'd be like, hell.
I love
metal.
I love that. Yeah,
exactly.
Nice. I had a similar approach with my wife when the latch on the dryer broke. She's like, "Oh, it's 8 years old. It's time for a new dryer." It's like, it's all just bolts. It's all just parts and pieces, right?
Hell yeah.
Little jelly beans. Yeah, we can fix it.
Our old dryer broke when we were in our old place, and I was like, my wife was like, "It's just like not getting hot." Yeah. And I was like, I refuse to believe that this means it's broken. Like right. There's a part. There's probably just like this stupid part. And I was like, I refuse to just like junk this thing. Right. Went to the dryer forums.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. We've both been there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and like sure, people are like, "Oh, it's definitely like this circuit or this thing, this fuse." Like looked them up on Amazon. They're like $2 each. I'm like, I'll fucking buy them both. Like
right, yeah.
Next thing I had like the entire dryer disassembled. Sliced my hands a few times, but then it works. It's like, dude, I just saved myself like $1,300.
Yeah, when we first moved into this house, we had we were in a kind of a small space, and they had like one of those combination washer and dryer things, which everyone I've ever told about their first reaction is usually like, "Oh, that's super cool." It is not. They suck.
I bet.
They're terrible, and they broke constantly. So I had that thing apart like 5-6 times, and I don't know if they have like kids in the factory like sharpening the edges of all the sheet metal.
Yep.
But like the worst, flimsiest screws, but like the sharpest.
Yes.
I have a scar on my thumb, 2 stitches from underneath the washing machine when the drain got clogged.
Yeah. I'm so glad to hear this because I was like taking apart the dryer and I was like, this is not that difficult. You just like remember where all the bolts go. And like as I was replacing those 2 parts, I gashed my hand open. I was just like, what in the world?
No.
It's like paring knives just like sticking up.
Right.
It's so crazy. It's one of those weird things where like it's like very cheaply constructed, but they're like crazy expensive to buy. Yeah. And then when you actually go to repair it, you're like, this is junk. This is real junk.
I think, the other appliance that we had that broke that I fixed myself for cheap, but it was like such a pain in the ass. But it was the funniest thing was our old oven. My wife just like closed it and then the glass exploded.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, it was such a pain. So the glass explodes. Oven works fine. Just there's no glass. So I call Sears and I'm like, can you fix this? I mean, a fucking glass exploded. I've got like a baby who crawls around. They're like, well, we're gonna have to send someone out to assess the problem. And I was like, the problem is the glass is everywhere. And they're like, well, they need to assess the actual problem. And that's a $275 fee or whatever it was. It was like, and I was like, no, really, the problem is that the glass is broken. Like, that's like, you can skip that part. There's no glass. Like the glass part broke. I mean, like, this is not complicated. It's not electrical. The fucking glass broke. like, sir, we can't replace the glass until we have a technician come out to confirm the problem. Yeah, just like, don't bother then.
Yes, this is your dumbass fee, is what they're really trying to tell you. This
right.
is your fee for being a dumbass.
Right.
And you have to pay it.
Yeah. If you don't want to buy the $13 pane of glass, we will send someone out to your house for $200 to confirm that your glass is broken.
Yeah.
Right. I think that this stubbornness, though, like household appliances and cars go hand in hand, right?
Very much.
Right. Like I daily drove like a Saab before I had the Vic, and that's just the fun car, right? I daily drove a very modified Saab 900 that clutch cables would snap all the time, like all of these things, but the stubbornness to keep going, and like just because you need it to be the thing that you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I mean, like, it's a cable. Like, what am I gonna not get rid of the car because a cable snapped?
Right.
And that is like, that was the thing about the '84 Honda Accord, was that the way that it failed was in this sort of bigger way where you're just like, what's the fucking point of this car?
Yeah.
And the Alpha fails in these tiny little ways where you like, I have at least 5 problems with the car going at any given time.
Right.
But it's like, you can deal with it.
It's a surface area to manage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that Honda, I drove like all through high school, drove it out to college at University of Illinois. So drove it the 1,000 miles out to Champaign. It lasted throughout my freshman year. And then the summer, and into my sophomore year, I don't know. But at some point, I got a job. I like convinced a local car dealership because I wanted to be a writer. And I was like, I just want to like get a professional portfolio as soon as possible. And your local TV commercials suck. So I want to write you your TV commercials. This was like the most naive thing.
Okay.
Like, I was like, let me tell you something. I am a fucking 18-year-old kid who wants to be a writer. I love Swedish films.
Yeah. Who better to talk to the 40-somethings that you're trying to sell cars to?
Right. It was like, your local car dealership. Like, I'm going to transform your shitty car commercials where a guy is standing in a parking lot pointing out the vehicles and the prices. I'm going to transform it into the next wave of cinema. And the guy was like, yeah, okay. Like, sure. You want to write a commercial? Okay. And I was like, whatever you pay me is fine. I just really want the experience. And he's like, oh, cool. You know what we'll do is we'll give you credit toward a car.
Genius.
I was like, great. Yes. Oh, absolutely. So I like all summer, I'm turning in scripts where I wrote like first script I wrote for them. I was like in the header of it, I was like, this commercial is shot on super 16 millimeter film, black and white. Like,
you're like, do you have a helicopter?
So first of all, get your Aeroflex out. We're going to get some 16 millimeter film stock, super 16, mind you. We want it widescreen.
Right.
And we have it on the double yellow lines on the asphalt. And I'm like turning in these scripts that are just like, and then like, it's just nothing. And then all of a sudden it's just like, blah, blah, blah. Like the name of the place, super minimal. It's going to be really effective. They would just get these scripts and be like, yep, right into the trash. Like, can you please edit the circular while you're here, by the way? Thanks for that script. Here's something. Can you get Ann grab a coffee for me? And I'd be like, okay. So none of my commercials got made. And then at the end of my tenure there, the Honda Accord, the wheel locked up, the rear wheel just like locked. And I like went over there. And the guy was like, well, between your credit, your vast amount of money you've banked here,
the scripts we burn for heat.
Right, exactly. And I was like, yo, I need a new car, man. This thing is done. And he was like, oh, let's check this out. And he tried to drive it in. It's like,
just dragging the wheel.
He was like, yo, the wheel doesn't spin. I was like, that's new.
Honda does that.
Yeah, Honda does that. He just goes, okay, so this is scrap metal. But that's how I got my second car. Like, I think I paid $1,000 because of my credit and the Honda to get my second car, which was a '91 Eagle Talon, which was
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
There you go.
I mean, it was obviously used because it was
Sure.
1999 at this point, but it was like flip up headlights, one of which worked. It was great.
Yes. Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like to
So-
think that they used the scripts as like entertainment at the Christmas party. They just did like take
Yeah.
a read.
Maybe
Right,
reenact
right.
them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Judy, come here. You play the part of death here. He's got a Grim Reaper part in this one.
I was gonna ask if none of them made it to air then.
Yeah.
Is that-
None of them. No.
Oh man. Yeah. That'd
Yeah.
be a fantastic YouTube series. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
my-
right. This. Oh God.
you should make them now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I would have been writing them in 1997, no later than 1998, and I did not own a computer back then, so I have no idea. Like, I'm trying to think how if like did I go to the computer lab maybe at the college, like the university, and just like I might have written them like with like a word processor, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
there
it's
may
like-
be one old floppy somewhere that has
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
right?
Interior, an apartment in New York. A despondent couple stares out the window. It's like, dude, we sell used cars in Champaign, Illinois.
And you're like, what's your travel budget? We want to do this on location.
Exactly. I only need a small crew.
30 to
It's gonna
40
be
guys.
filmmaking.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is a film festival material. This is going to pay dividends, guys. You know, you're going to sell those cars, but I'm talking about South by Southwest jury award here.
Yes.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Oh man. I want to say I think we did a car show. We actually did a show sort of about cars this time. That was enjoyable.
Yeah.
Dave, anything else? Should we wrap it up? What do you think?
We really appreciate you coming on, David. Like this has been a fantastic time. Yeah.
No, it's been a lot of
So
fun.
much fun.
I'm
I
very
forgot there were
much
other humans outside of this house.
I'm very much looking forward to the David Ian slow-ish drive, like group drive sometime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love, honestly, to see your Alpha in some fun, some interesting elements, like perhaps an autocross course or something like that.
When one of the last things I did before I left LA was went on a drive. This was after the pandemic had set in. It was all social distance and done safely, but it was with I'm gonna forget her name because I only met her the one time. She's great. I like follow her on social media. But Derek Powell, Derek Powell
Yes.
from Top Gear, and he was borrowing like an old Alpha, this beautiful like vintage Alpha that was very fast, and she had an old Datsun, and like we met up for like a drive, like doing the twisty roads, whatever they are, and I was like, I am literally like flooring it trying to keep up with them. This like tiny old Datsun is just like zoom,
Nice.
And so you will leave me in the dust, but if you're patient, I would love to do that.
No.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. I love the stubbornness and the simplicity of cars that like kind of embody this like that. Oh, I love it. I love it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I would. I'd love that too. Well, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys having me here.
Yeah, of course. So everyone go, if you haven't listened to Tempest, go listen
Yeah.
to Tempest. You also, David also has a website. Dave, I put it in the talk about.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll put that in the show description and everything.
davidobuchowski.com.
Yeah.
You're on the media's social, Twitter primarily, or?
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I have a private Instagram account. I don't put my kids on public Twitter. So the Instagram is for pictures of the kids for just the like friends and family.
Smart.
So
Yeah.
find me on Twitter, and I will say car Twitter is like a very positive, affirming, happy place. It's especially during these times, it is really a good place. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really does seem to be. It's interesting, how the different mediums have sorted the car people into different places. We were talking about the different forums and stuff, but car Twitter is great.
yeah, I mean, car Twitter is like people are just like, oh, cool, you like a car. Like it's like very anti car snob, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, David, thank you again so much. This was so much fun, and I can't wait for the 3rd season of Tempest.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay, take care.